Today we are going to be looking at the wonderful area of hoards. And not whores, hoards. Okay? What, whores? No, right, okay, so one thing today, we've looked at swords, we've looked at jewellery, and those two things in particularly when we look at jewellery, will link us in to what we're doing today. Next week we're actually doing glassware. And one thing about hoards is the great variety and meaning and interpretation of hoards. So, just the three of us. Dorothy, when I mentioned the word hoard, what am I talking about?
Gold, finding gold and things in a big pile.
Good. Bill?
Yeah, a hidden collection of artifacts, not necessarily coin or gold. If it is gold, it's declared as treasure trove, isn't it?
Yes. And Jim, hoards.
Lots of people.
Okay, that's three interpretations. That's fair enough. That's good. The one interpretation of a hoard is that it's a supply or accumulation that is hidden or carefully guarded for preservation or future use. The presumption is here that it's there for future use. To accumulate for preservation, a hidden or carefully guarded place. To accumulate money, food, or the like in a hidden or carefully guarded place for preservation, future use, etc. The word hoard, and I'm in a flow, the word hoard is a word that comes from about 900. In English, it's basically hoard, or Old English hoard, Old Norse hoard, Old High German hort. In other words, to hide or hidden. It can refer to a stockpile, reserve, cash, store, or stock. In other words, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a precious item like gold, silver, or diamonds. In fact, no mention today is made of artifacts that are specifically heavily jewel-laden. There are some artifacts with jewels in them, but you don't hear about hoards of diamonds, for example, do you? You always hear about the stereotypical idea of a hoard being the like of coins. Now, we've got quite a lot of images to get through today. And
what about hoards regarding to Kublai Khan and the hoards? You're referring to the warriors. They were called hoards.
That's still a collection of things, items, individuals. So in other words, it can still be classified as meaning the same thing as hiding an item, except that hoard itself is out there in the open. And can you see this image?
No.
Oh, right. Can you see the image? Let me know. Right. So, who mentioned treasure trove? Well, the idea of the Treasure Act, the definition of treasure, objects other than coins, is quite weighted, this, 1996. Any object other than a coin, provided that at least 10% by weight of metal is precious, silver or gold, and that it is at least 300 years old when found. This means that objects plated in gold or silver will not normally be treasure, i.e. they're probably more recent. Or that there's not that much gold in the item found. Coins. All coins that contain at least 10% of gold or silver by weight of metal and that come from the same find, provided a find consists of at least 2 coins of gold or silver content. The coins must be at least 300 years old at the time of discovery. In the case of finds consisting of coins that contain less than 10% of gold or silver, there must be at least 10 such coins. So 9 bronze coins is not a hoard, 11 is. This definition only includes coins and tokens made after the introduction of the first coinage into this country during the Iron Age, and excludes objects made earlier such as iron currency bars. Well, we've already looked at this, haven't we? Iron talks from the Iron Age being far more valuable than gold that can just be picked up in streams, where iron needs a lot more effort to produce. But however, our definition of something valuable is based on our current monetary value. If somebody suddenly found a whole island which was completely made of gold, the value of gold will completely drop, and maybe the value of iron will be far greater than gold. But that hasn't happened yet. Any object of whatever composition that is found in the same place as or that had previously been together with another object that is treasure, the object may have been found at the same time as or later than the item is classed as treasure. You can find gold from 100 years ago, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say it's treasure trove. There's an interesting list here, and this interesting list gives you an overview of hoards found over the past 200 years. And some of these we will include, and the monetary value is in today's monetary value, except some are on the coroner's monetary value, which is different from the actual value of the items. The coroner may undervalue an artefact, so a museum can buy the artefact. Okay, there are many cases of that, where finders of items have been completely fleeced by the state. There is one upsetting and disconcerting thing, that when I've come across metal detector enthusiasts in a field, they have constantly said to me, when I've said, why don't you report all your items to the museum? It comes back that the museum is not interested in anything other than gold or silver. If you find a bronze axe head, they might be interested, but most things are to be discarded. And that's what I hear on the street from metal detector enthusiasts. The museum is not interested in recording things that are other than gold or silver in most cases. 1811. A hoard of 3,000 Roman gold and silver coins, now valued at £500,000. That starts off the list. 1828, Crondale, Hampshire. A hoard of coins from the 600s worth £750,000 today. A place called Long Framlington in 1834. 300 gold coins from the 1300s, now valued at maybe £500,000. So people have been finding these hoards for some time. 1907. This is interesting. And this is the question. What constitutes a hoard? The bronze head of Emperor Claudius, valued at £750,000. Is that constituted as a hoard? It's constituted as a hoard if there's other artefacts found with it. But that's not what wasn't gold or silver, it was bronze. Sutton Hoo. All the objects found there in 1939 are now worth £20 million. Milden Hall, Suffolk, a hoard of Roman silver worth £20 million today. The owner had a fraction of that when he found it because he didn't declare it straight away. So the state said, because you didn't declare it straight away, we'll give you a few coins. So no wonder people don't like declaring their things. The Fishpool Hoard of gold and silver jewellery worth £3 million. Belstead, Suffolk, 5 gold torques worth £500,000. Colchester, long cross pennies, 14,000 of them, worth £1 million today. 1971, a gilt bronze statue of St. John, £250,000, and it goes on. Prestwick, 1972, hoard of silver coins, £500,000. Petney, Norfolk, Anglo-Saxon coins and brooches, £500,000. Mildenhall 2, this time in Wiltshire, 50,000 Roman coins, 50,000 may I add, worth £1 million. Another hoard found in Frome in 2010 of 52,000 coins, but because they weren't gold or silver, they were worth less than 50 grand. Just because there's a large hoard, it doesn't mean to say it's worth a lot of money. Thetford, Norfolk. Most of these have been found up to this point without the advent of metal detecting. Roman gold and silver objects, £3 million. Cardiff, Coed y Wenallt, 82 silver coins from the 1100s, 300,000, 1990. York, Anglo-Saxon helmet, £500,000. Mildenhall, Yorkshire, These ones with Mildenham, not Mildenhall, but Milden seems to be a place to find things. A gold and sapphire pendant in 1985 worth £4 million. A single pendant, that's more treasure than a hoard. A hoard of coins from Norwich, £1 million, 1989. Whitewell, Rutland, £250,000 hoard of Roman coins. Big one that we're doing tonight, Hoxie, Suffolk. A hoard of Roman gold and silver coins. Gold and silver were valued at £2.5 million. Well, actually, there was more gold and silver found there than there was at Sutton Hoo. But this is worth a fraction. It's a bit strange, that. Calso, Scottish Borders, 50 coins from the 1500s, 1,200 coins, £500,000. Milton Keynes, gold, torques and bracelets, dating to roughly 1200 years BC, £300,000. Winchester.
Who pays the money?
I will do that in a minute. Winchester, Hampshire, Iron Age gold jewellery from the 80 BC, worth £500,000. Bedford, a hoard valued of gold coins worth £2,300. Ringlemere, and this is the one we're going to end on because that's actually where we start. We don't need to do any more. Ringlemere, basically a gold cup. Okay, is that a hoard or is it a treasure? But then again, you can make your own mind up. Dating back to 1,700 years BC, worth £300,000. My big argument with metal detecting enthusiasts is that the state has to buy their artefacts, which relies heavily upon the taxpayer and revenues from the museum. If metal detecting enthusiasts wanted to help the state, they should simply donate their artefacts, which all us archaeologists are meant to do as well. So we, as taxpayers, have got to pay for their hobby, which I think is disgusting, and that's why metal detecting should be banned. But that's me. Right, we've been looking at this image for a fair bit. Have any of you worked out what this means yet? Hopefully not. What? Why is that linked to what we're doing today?
Oh, why is it linked to what?
Bruegel and his harvesters.
Yeah.
It's in a golden hoard of wheat.
Nope.
They're using the scythe.
Nope.
Taking a rest underneath the tree.
We'll leave that there. Right, we'll leave that there because you've got close, Bill. Right. This is otherwise, these are two golden cups found. One was found with other artefacts, so it's classed as a hoard. The other one was not found with any other artefacts. So whilst I find my reference here, which is hidden, like all good treasure.
Where's Ringlemere?
Ringlemere is in Kent. And where's the other bugger? Oh, sugar. I just missed it. I just lost it. Is that the one there? I think that's there. Nope, that's one other one I'm missing. Talk amongst yourselves and to talk about the cricket score. Has anyone been watching the cricket lately? I haven't. Very boring game. This we've got the Rilliton Golden Cup from Cornwall, and we've also got the Ringlemere Cup from Kent. And this is the Ringlemere. And this is our wonderful example from Cornwall. This golden cup was found with a dagger, so this could constitute a hoard. This was found in 1818 and is approximately dating from about 2,000 years BC. Now the Rilliton golden cup from Cornwall was unearthed by antiquarians by complete accident. They found a dagger alongside a skeleton. The Rilliton cup is 3 inches and a quarter inch in height. Not very large at all. The cup itself is one of a number of golden cups found across Britain, but they are very, very limited. There's a legend associated with the Rilliton cup, and I will mention that legend. It may not seem of any relevance, but the point associated with the legend associated with this cup is that lots of these things are found by complete accident. Lots of artefacts still lay hidden underneath our rich landscape of Britain. Many found by accident over the years, some deliberately found. But when an artefact is found and taken out of the ground, it loses its context. The harvester and Bruegel. Got the link yet? For hundreds of years, the local moor was said to be haunted by the ghost of a druid priest who would emerge from a nearby barrow and offer passers-by a golden cup, which contained a magic potion. When the traveller drank from the cup, it was impossible to drain the cup dry. During one of these supposed encounters, the traveller was said to have thrown the remaining liquid in the spectre's face, and soon afterwards he and his horse both died in an accident. It is not known whether sightings of the druid stopped after the Rilliton cup was excavated. So in other words, you've got these legends, and this golden cup is found. Those who have been on my ghost walks will know the link. Right, let's look at this next. We're still not doing the harvesters at this stage, but this is known as the Ringlemere cup. The Ringlemere cup itself is, if we go back, that's its state as it's displayed. That's what it would have looked like. The Ringlemere cup itself dates from around 1,700 years BC. And archaeologists think that these artefacts were exceedingly rare. Archaeologists think, oh my God, we've got this wonderful golden cup in several localities across Britain, and they're very rare. And in fact, our ancestors were not really capable of making many more of these. I say, tush. I say the fact that these artefacts themselves represent only a small assemblage of many thousands of golden cups that once existed. And these many golden cups have long since been discarded, deliberately buried, or in fact, as in many cases, melted down to make other artefacts throughout different periods. This Bronze Age golden cup dating to around 1,700 years BC was found 18 inches below the surface of a ploughed field. The Ringlemere cup was declared treasure trove and is now worth £300,000 or more. The surrounding area was excavated and revealing a complex Neolithic and Bronze Age landscape of graves and funerary objects. Now that's very important. And in a moment, we'll go back to the first image and everything will start to come into its place. Now, this artefact is the typical hoard that you would see associated when you look at coins. The idea of a hoard is what you see in front of you. What I'm going to do is find my reference. We often find hoards, and hoards themselves that are bronze hoards, ones found, for example, in Frome, don't necessarily mean that they're of any great value. This example of silver coins was found in a place called Prestwich in Bury, and most of these coins date from 1145. Now, this is a very interesting find because it was found, like the others, by accident. This find itself was made when a bulldozer driver and his young gardener were preparing a field to be used as a playing field at Prestwich Jewish School. It's described, they noticed a metal disc in the earth they had shifted, and soon after saw several more. The gardener showed these to the school caretaker, who thought they might be old seals. So they went back to the site and began digging, whereupon the ground caved in and they found many coins. I think that's very interesting, that they didn't know they were silver coins of great value when they found them. And in fact, many artefacts have been found throughout the years, and some other of these hoards that we're going to look at today, where people have found golden artefacts and they've just tossed them away thinking that they're rubbish. Okay, so many hoards have been lost and missed. And also those coins that you're looking at there, if they're not uncovered by archaeologists, they're taken home and washed. We have now got techniques to work out what bags these coins were kept in, and maybe the materials indicating who the bags belonged to. Because obviously a monk would put silver coins into a certain type of bag, and then you might have a silk purse belonging to a rich person, or a leather pouch belonging to somebody else. When you wash coins, you lose that wonderful piece of information. Now, and it's interesting that when we went to Tintagel, there was Peter. He went to a local pub. And the man in the pub, he said, oh, there was an archaeologist working in Boscastle. When he was working in Boscastle, he was working alongside a developer, and the developer found a piece of scrap metal and jokingly tossed it to the archaeologist, saying, oh, you know, this is a load of old scrap metal. And the archaeologist looked at it and started rubbing at it and think, oh my God, this is actually a Roman brooch. A solid gold, which are extremely rare. People can make huge mistakes and lose valuable pieces of data. Now, it was later realised that these coins were of great value, and with the 1065 eventually found pennies, half pennies, and they dug as deep as 6 foot to reveal more of these coins. They may relate to a very turbulent period in our history, the period when Queen Matilda, or Empress Matilda, was rebelling against her husband Stephen, and these coins were buried for a reason. The interesting point here is that the coins themselves, half of them looked like they were returned to the finders, and I think a small number were purchased by a local museum. These were not classed as treasure trove. They may sound like they were treasure trove. They were classed as a hoard and nothing else, because the state thought, actually, is this treasure? Is it not? Actually, the state can decide whether something's treasure or not, even though the Treasure Act says that it's treasure. Okay? It puts a lot of pressure on museums when a hoard is found for the museum to buy it, because local people are up in arms and they say, oh, actually, let's buy this for a museum, and the museum is under great pressure to use its resources to buy these artefacts found in the ground. Right, this itself, anyone know what this could actually be? I'll show you now. There's a picture of it in the ground. This is actually known as the Hawksden Hoard, found in Suffolk. And if you look at that there, if you equate the items there, this is only worth, this is actually valued at under £3 million. And the level of gold items, as you can tell there, wonderful array of gold chains and gold coins and other gold objects. Makes you wonder who's actually sat down working out the value of these things. Look at wonderful golden bracelets there, solid golden bracelets, and the rest are silver artefacts. Now, this is one of the greatest and luckiest finds ever. This is one of very few on my list today actually found using one of those metal detecting machines. This was found by complete accident, because the guy who was looking in a field was actually looking for a hammer that belonged to a local farmer. Guy was in his 70s. First of all, he found a silver coin. And shortly after it, he found a gold coin. And soon after getting signals from all over the area of the ploughed field in which he was searching, he reported afterwards, by that time I was really excited. The signals were becoming even louder. So I probed down to the bottom of the ploughed soil and uncovered hundreds more coins. In doing so, damaging the wooden box that they were contained in. However, there's some hope. He realised what he'd found, and he did not remove all the objects from the ground, and immediately informed the Sussex Archaeological Unit, who were able to supervise a controlled excavation. The Hawksden Hoard contained 565 gold solidi, solid gold coins, nearly over 14,000 silver coins of the Roman period, 29 pieces of golden jewellery, 6 chain necklaces, 1 elaborate chain, 3 finger rings, 19 bracelets, a prancing tigress, which I haven't got a picture of, but that's very famous, 4 pepper pots, 2 small decorated silver vases, all silver now, 4 small plain bowls, shallow plain dish, 20 round bowled ladles, 78 spoons, 3 small handed strainers, handed strain funnel, toothpicks of silver, these are all silver, ear picks, 2 silver locks, and a variety of brackets and decorated studs from the case itself, and a picture of Lloyd George. The fact of the matter is, they also found only 24 bronze coins. Now, the big question that we got, was this deliberately buried in the ground for somebody to come back and recover? Was this deliberately placed in the ground to be forgotten? The fact of the matter is, there was only 24 bronze coins found with this collection. This is mainly of silver and gold. It starts to make you wonder why this is in the ground in the first place. Some people believe it was buried roughly around the year 408, thinking that somebody was going to come back and collect it. It's the most valuable find of Roman coins ever to have been recovered in Britain. But the owner wasn't given, I believe, the right value for this hoard. I think they were given somewhere in the region of 1.75 million when it's worth nearer 3 million. This was purchased, they've done it in that way so that they can actually see how it was in the ground. 1 or 2 of the items are not in there, they're on separate display. The problem is, when it was found, is that they were taking scoops of these silver coins out. It would have been nice to have thought that they were being kept in bags. How would they have been kept? That's a photograph of the finds after most of it had been taken away. The pots themselves, there you go, you can see all the coins there. Right, I bet you're all intrigued to know what the image of the harvester is about. There's some more of the artefacts. What do you mean, no?
I said, yeah.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're being enthusiastic, Dorothy. Right.
If I forget, will you remind them that if you're open next week, because it's school holidays, you might think you're not.
Yeah, we're here next week. We're here next week, but the following week, the following week I'm acting in Cardiff on the Thursday late afternoon, so we're going to be doing this class, but we're going to have to start earlier.
Anything to do with Demeter, the queen of the harvest, or somebody queen of the harvest, giving them
No, what? Actually, it's a bit more simple. Bill, the guy lying in the forefront.
Still resting when he's drunk.
Right, Bill. If you take that man, right, and put him on a white sheet of paper and then look at it, what would you think?
he's dead.
What would you think?
Sleeping.
What would you think? He's dead?
White piece of paper.
Well, okay, the grey, whatever background, but say you took him out and put him on it. That's all there was. You see what I'm getting at? What I'm getting at is when hoards are found in the ground, they're found out of context most of the time. They're taken out of the ground, taken to the museum, and the museum says, oh, that's nice. It's all bronze, not interested, it's all silver, whatever. The actual context is more important than the finds themselves. That man put somewhere else it's out of context, but by looking at the background, you can tell that this guy is one of the workers in the field. He's actually very tired. And that's on a break. This guy isn't lazy at all. He's not dead. He's resting from the hard work, the hard toil. In the background, you can hear the bells of the churches. You can hear the signs. You can hear communications. You can hear birds. You can hear various wood choppers in the background. Loads of activity. And that's what we're talking about, the hoard. When you find the hoard in the ground itself, it's full of all those outside ideas, otherwise known as the taskscape, where everything's put together to try and understand what that guy is about. And now you've got all the other things in context, you're able to understand. And when people get a hoard out of the ground, they go, wow, look at this massive hoard, it's in a massive container like that, and there's 20,000 coins in it. Look at that! The Romans must have carried around that 100 kilogram container full of coins, all the way around with them. And then the obvious person turns around and says they're not going to be able to carry that. Why would they carry around a big pot of coins that are actually valueless? Oh yeah, but it must have been put in the ground for them to come back. It's got to be. It's all those misconceptions that really spoil when they actually find a hoard. The Staffordshire Hoard, I wish it was never found, that golden Staffordshire Hoard, because it's been found completely out of context. And people say, oh, what's this about in the Staffordshire Hoard? What's this about in the Staffordshire Hoard? And if they had the rest of the picture, and it wasn't found by a metal detector enthusiast, we'd be able to understand it a bit more. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Let's move on a little bit further. Right, now, we're going to be looking at this one. Does anyone know what this is?
Silver.
Yes, it's a very important silver hoard.
It's Roman.
Yes, it certainly is Roman. Any ideas?
Was it found in the River Thames?
No, it wasn't found in the River Thames, no. This is at Middlehall in Suffolk. The Middlehall treasure itself is a completely silver treasure. And the Middlehall treasure itself was found over a period of time. It was found from the 1940s all the way into the 1990s. And as we've got this here, Middlehall in Suffolk, they found in 1940 34 pieces of Roman silver tableware, roughly dating from about the 200s. Nobody knows when it was deposited in the ground. It was found by a tractor driver at Thursley Green, West Row in Middlehall, Suffolk. He was ploughing more deeply than usual. It was 1940. All bits of our land needed to be ploughed so he could plant sugar beet. He was also keeping his eye out for coins, because he knew that some coins had been found in the area because a Roman villa was nearby. His tractor suddenly started to get jammed. The plough got jammed, and lo and behold, it was snagged into some kind of metal object. He described it as a metal dish, 2 foot in diameter. Arthur Ford, the landowner, decided to take this artefact and other artefacts home with him. But he didn't think they were silver at all. They were just chucked away. I don't know if he left it in his shed, but they actually thought there was lead or pewter plates and spoons. He didn't think it was of any value at all. 6 years went by, and then in 1946, however, he showed them to an archaeologist friend who insisted that the hoard should be reported to the British Museum. The museum revealed that it was far from worthless and was British silver, probably deposited not at the time it was made, but sometime in the late 300s. And at that day and age was worth £1 million. Today it's worth £20 million. In total, 34 highly decorated pieces were recovered, weighing over £55. And the great dish, which is this object, is one of the pride and praise objects in the British Museum. Flanged bowls, fluted bowls, ladles, goblets, spoons, and much of the decoration relates to Bacchus, god of wine, a common motif on silver tableware throughout the Roman period, except this was probably buried in the Christian period. Any clues to why it's in the ground? The large dish shows the central figure of the sea god Neptune, surrounded, as I said, by figures of Bacchus, Pan, and female companions. At an inquest, however, Ford was accused of concealing the find. He was not believed that he didn't know what it was, and instead of being rewarded from the British Museum to the sum of £1 million, he was given the trifling amount of £1,000. I believe he was completely robbed. Now, I think that Much can be said at this point. Why, when people find things on a building site, or if they're out detecting on a field, the reasons why they don't report them is because they're not given the proper value of those artefacts. And I've given 2 examples today of where the true value of these finds is withheld. This collection would have been is now worth £20 million and is in pride of display in the British Museum. But then again, the other point that we mentioned to Anne is that actually the taxpayer has to pay for these to be recovered and displayed in our museums by the state when they should have just been donated in the first place. Right, this itself is a very important treasure, and many of these artefacts have been found across the field. But before we actually move on to this find, this was found at Snettisham, Norfolk. The last find that we've just looked at, before we go completely onto this one, was this deliberately buried for the owners to come back? Was it buried because they felt that they were now Christians and they wanted to bury it in the ground? Were the owners so rich that they didn't care about it? And actually, I'm going to jump in there straight away. When I was teaching this on Tuesday, I wrote in my diary, that back in that day, there must have been crate loads of silver on display in Roman villas' homes. Okay, they must have, the landowners of these Roman villas must have had bucket loads of silver objects. When we see them today, we think, oh my God, the Romans must have really cherished this, and therefore they hid it, needed to come back for it. That gives a really false picture. They're into the Christian period. They got plates with the god and goddesses of pagan worship on them. They're not going to want to have them displayed in their homes because they're now showing that they're Christian. And I feel that every time that they say when a coin order has been found that they're going to go back for it is in fact wrong. There are loads of different reasons why artefacts are buried. Right, this is a collection here, not those. This is a collection here of the Snettisham Treasure found in Norfolk. In 1948, a farmhand was deep ploughing in a field known as Ken Hill in Snettisham. And he believed that the scrap objects that he was found were part of a brass bedstead and tossed them away. They were solid gold. But he didn't know that. Then several days later, some coins and more pieces of metal were found near the same spot. After cleaning the pieces of metal, they were identified as being Iron Age torques, gold torques. After examination of the whole field by the British Museum, nothing more significant was found. 1950. Another round of deep ploughing, more torques came to light. Not all were gold, some were silver, while others were electrum, an alloy made of gold, silver and bronze. In total, 61 torques of different quality were found, Bronze Age jewellery, gold coins and 80 tin coins believed to date from the year 70 years BC. Is this a hoard buried by people because they're going to come back? Actually, there's more. After the first 2 finds, inquiries confirmed that this was treasure trove, and both times the farmer was given a reward, probably a few pounds. Over the next 20 or so years, more torques were discovered, along with gold ingots, rings and silver coins, dated to 87 BC. But this was not the end. In August 1990, fragments of 50 more torques, fragments that is, 70 gold ingots and rings were found in the same field in 1990. The British Museum then decided that the area should be searched yet again and found at least another 5 separate locations where there were gold and silver, torques and various other artefacts. Does this sound like people burying something to come back? The grand total of finds made at Snettisham by farmers, archaeologists, detectives came to a grand total of 180 torques and fragments, 100 ingots and rings, and 234 gold and silver coins. It goes on to say that archaeologists worked in that field and couldn't find much more. And on numbers of occasions, they've gone into that field and just found iron nails just under the surface and more talks. It was said that these coins and talks and other artefacts were hidden in the field in 55 BC in advance of Julius Caesar's army marching across Britain. Can anyone give me an idea, just one of you, why these may have been buried in the ground? Are they hoards of artefacts that the person who buried them, were they meant to come back and collect them? Or are they buried there for some other reason? Bill?
Well, I would bury something like that if I knew the Romans were advancing and not far away.
Yes, but they date from a lot earlier than that.
Then I obviously clear off and come back when the coast was clear. I think that's the most logical answer.
But it's all over the field, in different areas across the field.
Yeah.
It's not just in one spot.
Right.
This field, you hear about the leprechaun, and the leprechaun's digging a hole, and he's saying, "There's my gold in there. Go home and get a shovel." And you come back in the field. There's 1,000 holes in the field, and you don't actually know where he's digging and whatever. Yeah, that's what it's like. But this time, wherever they excavate or dig in the field, they find a hoard. Okay, there's lots of these across the field. So, yeah, that maybe you're right.
That's
But
the case. They probably were buried at different times.
they were buried at different. Yes.
Obviously, you wouldn't want somebody else seeing where you buried your hoard. So,
But how about if you look at this, a ritual burial, okay? We bury important people, don't we? When somebody dies, we love them to bits and we bury them in a spot. Or in my case, my children have been given instructions to burn me on the coast in a pyre. So I've got to sign that on my will, actually, to give them permission to do it. But anyway, if you look at that context, that our ancestors are actually burying artefacts that are important to them and just leaving them there, isn't that similar to burying somebody that you love? Or maybe they're buried there for another reason. Right, let's go on to the next image. Next images, I should say. Right.
What was you going to say, Anne?
What are you going to say, Annie?
Well, I'm going to say that I think people who bury things are mean because they just don't want people, they obviously don't want somebody to have it. It's either the Romans or their relatives or the man across in the next field, they're going to bury it, otherwise they would just leave it there.
Actually, Anne,
I don't think there's anything sacred about burial. I think it's mean.
Actually, Anne, you know what? I have mentioned that twice. I have mentioned this idea that why are we obsessed with people coming back to dig up these things? In the 1950s, I know an archaeologist that big archaeologist in Barry. In the 1950s, he was wandering around Penmark Castle, and he, at that point, was hoping to go to university to study archaeology. He had no money. And he was looking in the fireplace, and he found a box full of banknotes, right? And it turned out that these banknotes belonged to a local old boy in the village who had died, who had hidden all his wealth because he didn't want anyone to find it, okay? He was allowed to keep this money, and he used it to go to university. Okay, now that's a modern example, but when I do my ghost walks on at least 2 or 3 of the routes that we do the ghost walks, particularly Lantwick Major, there's 2 stories of a miser in the village. Nobody knows where that miser has hidden their money. Okay, and years later somebody buys the house, they extend it, and they find buried in the fireplace the miser's money. Okay, it's a hoard. Okay, it doesn't have to be buried in the ground; it can be buried in a tree. Okay, we've got examples of hoards being buried in old oak trees and so on. So the fact of the matter is, these are not always indications that somebody is going to come back and willingly wish to dig them up.
Offerings to Mother Earth?
Actually, yes, Mother Earth. When we went to Orkney and we saw our fogus underground, We basically, in the Fogus underground, they were passages. No, they were chambers with passages leading into them. Okay, and in the main chamber, there was a rock built up, and there was usually a little hole in the stonework, which was deliberately left, looking into the earth. And I described that at the point that you would look and you would sort of make an offering, be it an object, be it verbal, be it something that was organic. Yes, we have throughout time offered things to Mother Earth. Right, so just this last one now before we have the break. Now, this hoard itself is an absolutely amazing hoard. This is known as the Fishpool Hoard in Nottinghamshire. In 1966, altogether 1,237 gold coins were recovered, 4 rings, 4 pieces of jewellery and 2 lengths of chain. Do you notice that when they're describing rings, they're not describing them as jewellery, when the other week we were? Lengths of gold chain, that's not described as jewellery. So to us, the other week when we did jewellery, lots of things were classed as jewellery. These date to about the 1300s. And it's believed that lots of the jewellery indicate that they belong to somebody who was a member of the Lancastrian elite. Because in the year 1464, at the Battle of Hexham, the Yorkists categorically defeated the Lancastrian army. And containing in this collection of coins were coins from Lancastrian kings and coins from the King of France and Philip of Burgundy. Now, when this was originally found in 1966, it was estimated that the value of the hoard was around £250,000. I'm not exactly sure that that's £250,000 now or then, because I would say maybe then, because the value of gold there is a lot more than £250,000. However, the story has it that at the coroner's inquest, the hoard, being valued at the figure that I've already said, £250,000, whether that's today or then, but the workmen who actually found it didn't declare all their findings. They only declared 1/10 of the findings of the gold coins and the other artefacts. The police managed to track down most of the other artefacts. There were probably other gold artefacts found as well that were not declared. Because they willfully concealed their finds, it was recommended that no award should be made and that their fines should be forfeited. Only after an appeal were they awarded a token sum. Now, obviously, the reason why they kept that gold is quite obvious. They had heard of other examples where the state turned around and said, look, we'll just give you a couple of pennies, okay? And they ended up giving the finders a couple of pennies. There should be across-the-board agreement. If you're going to give people monetary value for finding artefacts, it has to be the proper value, not an estimated value and not the real value, okay? And this is what's coming out in lots of these hoards. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. Are there any questions?
Yeah, valuation. Who decides what the valuation is? Obviously,
A coroner's inquest.
So who advises him?
Who advises him is an expert from, if an expert from Bonhams or Sotheby's, a learned expert in these things. But whether it's the proper value, which is coming out that is usually not, very suspicious. They know full well that the museums are going to want to buy these artefacts, so it seems to me that it's fixed. Anyway, any other questions before we have a break? We're going to have a short break today. Okay, right. Let's have a break. Let's look at part 2. Yeah, go on.
Most of the hoards have been after Romans.
But yeah, most of the hoards, when people think a hoard's being found, they intrinsically always think that it's a Roman coin hoard. Let's move on. We've got hoards like this one displayed on the screen, a hoard of Iceni coins. But you've led us directly, with our pants down, Jim, into a hoard that was found at Frome, and there's an article associated with it. There's some of the coins being revealed. A hoard of 52,000 coins. There you go, there's the top of it, and there's the coins of different denominations. There you go, not that there. So what we're going to do, we've got the article, and this is known as the Frome Hoard. Treasure hunter finds a hoard of 52,000 coins. These coins themselves were of little value to the Romans, let alone the finder, who was eventually given a token amount for these 52,000 coins. If 52,000 coins, and these were all solid gold, this by far would be one of the most valuable hoards ever found in the history of this planet. But they were 52,000 Roman coins of bronze denomination. So valueless that 52,000 coins equate to probably, I think at the time we worked it out, 3 weeks' wages. And you're not going to carry these around with you, are you? They're basically valueless. It's the biggest, it's one of the biggest, not the biggest ever found of gold coins, not gold coins, it's one of the biggest hoards of coins ever found in Britain, but not a single one of them was gold. The coins held in a jar weighing 160 kilograms, an earthenware jar. This article's full of inaccuracies. And it also said this is 4 years' pay for a Roman legionary soldier. Absolute nonsense. The find was initially made at the end of May 2010, and eventually the site was excavated by the museum service. The discovery at Frome stands out as a story, mainly because Dave Crisp reported it immediately to his local coroner. But there's one thing that can be said about this hoard. The first thing the archaeologists did was to bring them into their studio and start washing them, okay? Start to conserve them, start to try and work out what the coins were and all the rest of it. Now we're finding out that it's the best thing to do is examine the overall weight of the coins and to see if there's any material with them, see if there's any organic fibres attached to the coins. That will tell you if the coins were placed into little bags. And if they were placed into little bags, that might represent that a little bag of coins, that little bag of coins was destined for person A, and that little bag of coins was destined for person B. That would truly indicate what these coins were about. But no, they didn't do that. They were hastily prepared to look at these coins and work out from which years these emperors reigned. It said that as opposed to a hoard itself, the Staffordshire Hoard of Saxon Jewry earned the finder Terry Herbert a cool £1.3 million, when in fact the Staffordshire Hoard is worth many multi-millions of pounds more than that. The coins that he found were probably worth around 50 grand. Not worth much at all. On the open market, each of those Roman coins was probably worth £1 each. And the finder wasn't given that much less than that. The hoard would eventually be placed on display in Taunton Museum. But the point that I've been trying to make all the way through this, it's not about the hoard itself, it's about where the hoard is sited within the landscape. So the first thing that people said was that this represented 4 years legionary pay for a single legionary. That's nonsense, okay? It was more like 3 weeks. If you look at my book, you see a table in there, and that's what it equates to. The other thing as well is that these coins, it's said, were carried around with the Roman soldiers, okay? And what did we say the weight of it was again? we said the weight was 160 kilograms. These coins were carried around by the Roman soldiers, right? Can you imagine them going down the street? Come on, boys, let's carry it down the street. Okay, they worked out that that wasn't the case. If you try and carry that volume of coins around in an earthenware container, the bottom of the earthenware container will drop out because it would not be able to deal with the stress. On Time Team, they did an experiment. They had heard about coin hoards like this, and they did an experiment on Time Team. And what they did in Time Team, I think it was Phil Harding. He had a wheelbarrow of copper coins, which were actually the same size as these coins found in the Frome Hoard. And he had a wheelbarrow, and I think there was, I think they had about 50,000 copper coins. And they actually had, they actually brought them out from a local bank who had ordered them in from the English Museum, the Bullion or whatever. They had ordered these coins in, and you could see Phil Harding with his wheelbarrow going like this. I can't handle pushing this. So he's going into the field, and there's a narrow neck, right? So he's having to scoop these coins into the narrow neck, and some fall out and whatever. It takes him ages to do it. And then they worked out that these coins were nothing more than small change. I go down the street today, right? And if I'm lucky and going through a street in Barry, right, I can make £1 just by walking up the street, right? Because you see local youths and mature people just chucking their copper coins onto the street.
They don't like to see
And believe me, right, and it's happening with 5p pieces now as well.
In Barry.
In Barry, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's just, they're flinging away 5p pieces. Mind you, in Cowbrews, they'll fling anything away. But anyway, and that's the point. By inferring that piece of evidence, we can work out that these coins themselves were as valueless to the Romans as they are to us today. And you can understand why they're in the ground. It was initially said that this hoard of coins was placed in this big container, which would be difficult to get the coins in the first place. Okay, so if we look at the neck of this container, you know, it's going to be it's a little bit tapered there, and trying to get all these coins in there, they're going to spill out all over the place. And then how are you going to get these coins back out again? You're going to roll the container out this way and just pour them out, you know?
But that container was put in the ground empty.
It was put in the ground empty, yes. And the final clue is that they put it in the ground, and when they excavated it, they found packaging around it. Okay, they found it's actually got it in this article. They found that there was packaging around it, and that stabilised the container, and they put all the coins in there. What's that? Margaret?
Russian spray.
Right, let's move on to the final slides. Okay, so here we go. So you can imagine, if you're going to pay Roman soldiers this money, right, it would all look the same. It would all be minted at one point in time and would be taken out. They're all worn. There are lots of damage on these coins. Look at that coin there compared to, say, that coin over there. Or, you know, you can't really compare it, can you? Over there, that one there, and that one there, you can see?
This one below it is a yellowy.
You can imagine, so it's very unlikely that these coins were ever destined for Roman soldiers themselves. Now,
Was that found?
that was found as well, yes. Not with this hoard, okay? No, it's not a duck.
I thought it was a female.
It's a swan.
A
swan. Now, we only be talking about jewellery and hoards and all the rest of it. This is an individual item, okay? But was this individual item in 1965 found with other artefacts? If it was found with other artefacts, by very nature of the Treasure Trove Act, that becomes treasure, and by the very nature of a collection of items, that becomes a hoard, okay? I'm using this as an obscure example, a 1.5-inch high livery badge, okay, known as the Swan Jewel, made in opaque white enamel, feathers over gold, with a gold chain and coronet attached, probably made by a London goldsmith. This may have belonged to somebody from the House of Lancaster. The point of this artefact is that you look at this, it looks wonderful, doesn't it? And if you move on, it's isolated within the museum context. And the very meaning of this object is completely lost. What it was about is completely lost. Disinherited objects from the other objects in the hoard means that the individual item loses its context or meaning. And that's exactly the point. When these things are taken out of the ground, the position in the ground is important. Where they're found in the ground with other artefacts are important. What they were contained in is all very, very important.
And when was that found?
This was found in 1965. Moving on.
How old is it?
This dates back to about 1380.
Where's that? Looks like Fabergé. Oh, go on now. Go on. Well, we just found out we're related to the Trafford family. Wasn't Trafford belong?
Old Trafford.
Were they related to the Lancasters, Trafford?
I don't know. I'm not a genealogist, but an archaeologist, right?
We'll have to find out.
Now,
Is it
lots of artefacts, okay? Lots of artefacts are to be seen in an individual context. Again, what was this found associated with in 1970? Because it's a gold artefact. The thing is to get this gold artefact out of the ground with garnet inlay found at Burton Pidsey in East Riding, Yorkshire. This was found by a pig farmer in a muddy field. And it was found in the 1970s, and it was not recognised for what it was until 1998. It starts to make you wonder that so many things must be found and people don't know what they are and they simply discard them. It was his daughter that took it to the whole museum a full 2.5 decades later, filled with garnets on a gold background. It was acquired by the museum for a very small sum of £70,000. Other examples have been found, but it starts to make you wonder why the full value for these artefacts are not given. The Alfred jewel itself, worth beyond £1 million, is a smaller object than this. Even though it's very beautiful, that's given a higher price tag, as I said, of over £1 million. This is given a very small price tag. What this was found with, we simply don't know.
Well, at least it's gone into a museum.
At least it's going to a museum, yes.
Yeah, Russians and all these people with lots of money, they buy things.
Why are people Russian phobic in this room?
No, somewhere, Chinese, whatever, and they hide them away. They hide them away.
Let's move on. Right.
They bought them away.
I don't. You can be Russian phobic, but I love the Russians.
No, I don't know who it is.
Well, because you've got a Russian hat.
They buy things like
That's
that.
true. Off Bill, the Russian hat. I like it. It's going to be brought out. Right. Let's move on. Last one. This is known as the Karl-James Hoard, found in the Preston area, Lancashire. In 1840, over 7,000 silver coins and 1,000 ounces of silver ingots dating from the 8 to the 900s was found in a decayed lead-lined wooden box on the banks of the River Ribble. A group of workmen were walking about 400 yards from the riverbank when they came upon a large waterlogged mass of soil that had slipped down towards the river, and where it had slipped were the exposed remnants of the wooden chest. The hoard was believed to have been buried during the flight of the Viking army from Edward the Elder, AD 911. Now, because it was found in that area, it's simply assumed that it was buried by a Viking army. Here we go, here's the quote from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles. A Viking army harried the north of England at will until King Edward sent his own army and also summoned his allies from Mercia. And they came up with the rear of the enemy as he was on his way homeward, and they fought with him and put him to flight, and slew many thousands of his men. Now, the problem is with lots of these hoards and artefacts found in the ground, treasure, is that we always wish to associate them with historical events that have been recorded. What about finding something in the ground, right, associated with an event that's not recorded? Okay? Okay, they could have been... This could have simply have been a mistake of history. There's so many reasons why these artefacts occurred out there in the ground. And the fascination and obsession that humanity has at this minute with greed in the form of gold and silver puts away from the values that our ancestors had. It's not all about coins. In a sense that the real description of the word hoard can very much relate to any accumulation of artefacts, and it's those artefacts that may give you more detail than just an association of silver spoons or an association of gold coins. At the Moss Farm excavations in Peterborough very recently, we saw a whole collection of pottery which had their contents, the last meals of the people, up to about 3,000 years ago plus, at the Moss Farm excavation, which was a sensation at the time. And archaeologists must really see that the context of a hoard could be very much associated with the real lives of our ancestors. For example, you'd see an image here at Moss Farm of a wheel. Say you've got a whole collection of wheels. These are real-time signs of the past. This constitutes a hoard also. Vindolanda, the wonderful finds at Vindolanda where you find tablets telling you of the lives of Roman soldiers serving at the site, a very windy border that we see now between England and Scotland, Hadrian's Wall. Vindolanda and the subjects and nature of the information are fascinating, and thousands of these have been found. Again, accumulation of these Vindolanda tablets are in fact constituting a hoard. I said at the very beginning of this lecture about the Staffordshire Hoard, and I wished it had been left in the ground. The Staffordshire Hoard itself, the largest hoard of anglo-saxon gold and silver metalwork yet to be found. 3,500 objects, 5.1 kilograms of gold, for 1.4 kilograms of silver, and thousands of items of jewellery found in a field in Staffordshire in 2009, artefacts dating as early as the 500s to about the 700s. My feeling with the hoard itself is that it detracts from the very meaning of each individual object. We see this great collection of gold in a cabinet, and because it's gold and because there's silver objects there, we just get carried away with the fact that somebody accidentally didn't come back and recover this hoard. But very few people actually discuss why this was buried in the ground. People associate this wonderful gold and silver hoard with a group of people who may have been displaced from the hoard, were prevented from going back. What about in the past? They just looked at this and thought, what a load of old tat, we're just leaving it in the ground. Today we marvel at it. Back then they may have thought it was a pile of old junk. And going back to the Vindolanda tablets, we can learn so much more from the Vindolanda tablets than what we can learn from the Staffordshire Hoard. It's disconnected from the idea of Brugels, harvesters, and that landscape. Hopefully you've enjoyed this lecture today. This lecture itself was recorded on Thursday the 20th of October. This is Karl-James Langford, and I really do hope you've enjoyed this recording. The next recording, which will be made at my classes for Archaeology Cymru, will be the 27th of October, and that will be looking at the fascinating subject of glass in a British context. Thank you very much.